Okay, everyone, welcome to our third installment in the Snapshot series for Utah Mandarin families. My name is Craig Watts. I'm having a little trouble with the pronunciation here, but really excited to have Ren Vernon with us from Wasatch Elementary in Provo, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her family, the background story, how they got started at Wasatch and where things stand. So go ahead, Ren, if you could introduce, and we'll just get talking. And I just want to say, we've been talking a little bit before this and a lot of interesting stuff, and it's just going to be kind of an open conversation here. So go ahead, Ren, and tell us how you got to Provo and got your child into Mandarin in Wasatch.
Okay. All right. So I'll try to make it a very short story. I am from Brazil. And once we moved back here to Utah about a year and a half ago, we decided to have our kids go back into Portuguese immersion at Rocky Mountain in Linden. However, my sixth grader, who's just was supposed to be finishing up sixth grade in Portuguese immersion, decided she wanted to be homeschooled. So at that point, I decided we're going to the neighborhood school, and with my youngest, which is in second grade, Zara. And Zara is a curious child and very positive. And I said, and by the way, you're going to learn Chinese like all your other neighbors.
How did she react?
I think she was excited, like anybody else would be, not understanding what it meant, right? The investment of time. She just thought, oh, great, I get to go to school and be in the same class as my neighbors.
So when was this conversation with Zara then?
This was about the beginning of December.
Just this past December. So we're talking 2 months ago.
2 months ago, yes. And I had talked to a few other friends who had put their kids into school in second grade. So I knew it was possible. And so I figured, I'm going to ask, I'm going to try. And I also realized, with COVID, they're probably not 100% full on like they are in a normal year. So that would be easier for Zara to kind of, transition. So they allowed us to do it. It's absolutely possible. And so the only thing was, the tutor. We needed to make sure we had a tutor to be able to catch her up quicker.
So you talked to the school in December and you said, okay, I've talked to Zara, we want to do this. And then the school said, okay, you've got to do some things for Zara to get her ready.
Basically, right. They just wanted to see her test scores, anything that she has done so far and her grades to ensure that she was okay, that she wasn't going to be in trouble if she got into Chinese and couldn't do her math or couldn't do anything in the English portion of the school, right? So once they saw that was okay, that she had mostly 3s and 4s, then, they said, okay, we'll take her. And so they did. They just said, welcome, here you go. Wear a mask, clean your, wash your hands, and here's your class.
And so did you start in December, or was it after Christmas vacation you came back and started?
She actually got to go to the last day of school in December, right?
Just one day.
Just one day.
Which is great, because then she gets a sense for the classmates and the style. And did she speak any Chinese when she walked into that class?
No, not at all. Not at all. That is one, in our home, because we speak Portuguese and Spanish and Italian, those are the, the Latin languages come really easily. But Chinese, although I do have an uncle from China, he immigrated to Brazil and he married my dad's sister. We just have never really had any Chinese anything in our house.
That's fascinating, though. So you've got a family connection through Brazil, huh? That's amazing.
I know. We have quite an international family back there. So.
And so Zara didn't come home in tears after that first day?
No, the reason why she had tears was because she was not in the same class as a specific friend. They actually do have.
So it wasn't the language.
It wasn't the language. Yeah, we actually took her to school, and she just was frustrated because her friend was not. They, the blue and red. She's red. Her friend is blue. They have the same teachers, but they just have to, cross. So that was it.
And then, so you come back off that first day, and you've got 2 weeks before you're going back into school, and what do you do?
I was ready. I'm a very proactive person. I was ready to just go into Chinese. I thought we were going to get at least her login from Mandarin Matrix. We were going to start doing something. but they didn't. In fact, it took me 2 to 3 weeks to get Mandarin Matrix, the login.
Right.
So, after we actually got school going in January. So she actually didn't start Mandarin Matrix until about 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Wow. So,
But yeah, what we did was, I just wanted to make sure that her tutor was set up, which I was able to get, references from other moms and talk to one of the teachers, and she said, yeah, I can do it. And so we set her up, and she's doing tutoring 3 times a week currently, and she's doing really well.
so is the tutoring in person, like you drive her somewhere, or is
No,
it
it's just on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's
you do
just on
3
Zoom.
hours, so like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something, or?
It's Tuesday, right? Because of our schedules, there are other things going on. It's Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And at first it started at 30 minutes, then we moved to 45 minutes. That's where we're at right now each day.
Right.
And then, I just make sure that I'm working with her. The biggest, I would say the biggest challenge for Zara has been that she was in Portuguese. She already knew some Portuguese. And so the only thing she had to do at home, like Mandarin Matrix, she had that component where she had to read in Portuguese at home, which we didn't do very well on.
Right.
And so then we get to Chinese, and it's a lot more homework, and that has been hard for her. She's used to not having any homework. She comes home, she just gets on Zoom and plays with her friends, and so she's been having to put in a lot more hours of homework, and that's been the biggest challenge. The actual language has not been hard.
So it hasn't been about catch up. It's just that all the students are doing quite a bit of homework. Is that right? Or is she doing more because she's trying to catch up?
She's doing more because she has to catch up, right? But there's also the component of us not understanding, because like I explained before, there wasn't really like an onboarding. This is what you're doing now. This is what we expect, or this
like
is
from the school. The school
from
didn't
the
kind of
school,
map out
right?
what
It
you
was
need.
just, hey, you're here, awesome, great.
Right.
Here's your teachers, good luck. And so I had to, and I guess because I'm always trying to, be proactive, I had to go and search and actually say, okay, what is it that she should be doing? What do you expect from her? Because I didn't get any of that. So,
so you went to the teacher to ask those questions? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I've been emailing the teachers and saying, okay, what does she need to be doing? And then a couple weeks into the semester, she got her Chromebook. And now she had to, and nobody told me this is her school ID and her email and
right.
her Mandarin Matrix login, nothing. And so I had to figure that all out on my own, which, if a parent is not expecting to be doing those things, your child is going to be behind because of that. Because once you get into Wasatch, as you know, it's go, go, go.
Yeah.
You
it's a good
gotta
program.
keep up.
Yeah.
And so luckily I was like, okay, I have to figure out what's going on. I have to be able to help her at home. And so, things are now, worked out so that, and then it's, lots of little notes to the teachers. Okay, what is she doing? For example, just last week, I realized that for math, she does the Chinese portion in class, but she does the English as homework. I thought it was all of it. All of it had to be done at home.
So the English math she's bringing home to do as to reinforce what she learned in the Chinese, right?
Right. Correct.
Yeah. It seems like it would be really helpful to have that explained, to the parents.
Yes, absolutely.
But, there's maybe communication issues, like with the teacher, and then they have a big workload and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And that I think, if I can look at the teacher's point of view, it would be somewhat frustrating to have a second grader come in that does not speak any Chinese, right? And now you're having to learn all these things in Chinese, especially math.
Right.
I'm sure it's kind of somewhat frustrating for the teachers, to be able to figure out what's going on with that child. So
do you feel like she's kind of caught up, like in terms of being able to follow in class and not being frustrated coming home? Like she's doing okay in just a couple months?
Yeah, she has not been frustrated. She is a little scared of her teacher.
That's not unusual because there's a
I
language barrier and a style issue. Sometimes they come from China and they're all like, rigorous.
Yeah. So the interesting thing happened. Let's see, was it the beginning of last week? I want to say she was reading Mandarin Matrix in class, and her teacher was able to hear her. And she said, Zara, you can read in Chinese? And Zara said, how?
Right. Yeah, she's got it.
And it was just funny because she hadn't, for whatever reason, she hadn't really heard her before. And so she gave her a sticker, and Zara came home super excited about it. But yeah, I'm sure it's a tough, it would be nice to have some type of, maybe an assistant or someone that, if they're planning, the school's letting kids do that, there's got to be some other third party that can kind of help liaison,
Right.
between the parents and the teacher.
I mean, it sounds like you really lucked out with the tutor. Can you tell us more about the background of the tutor and and how it's worked out? So
well, she's obviously Chinese, and I believe she was teaching 4th grade. It's Parish Lauscher.
So at Wasatch, she was right at that school.
At Wasatch, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if she is not teaching it, she will be teaching 4th grade. But she was a teacher there, so she knows everything, all the curriculum, right? She knows exactly what's going on. So what she's been able to do is she says, all right, you're going to learn the basic things like, wa, ta, da, like all these things. And then she's saying, now the words, the vocabulary, you're going to be learning what is actually being taught in 2nd grade. So that at least when Zara is working on Mandarin Matrix and they're reading things, she understands what is happening because she's with everybody else, right? So that's what she's been able to do. She's been able to teach us, and of course I'm there too, so I'm learning myself. But she's been able to, so that's why I say teach us all the things that she needs to know, the classroom, the basic classroom for 1st grade, and then vocabulary for 2nd grade. She's just teaching us all that so she can catch up quickly. And of course, I think, it helps that Zara has had another language because she gets the context of things and can deduce what she needs, what it is that they're trying to say based on that. Even if she doesn't know all of the words, she gets the context. So
yeah, I think it's got to be a big leg up. And so you actually sit in on the the tutor sessions. I think that's fascinating. I mean, and how is it for you? I mean, like, do you feel like you're going to be able to get some traction and learn this a bit, or does it feel like, oh,
yeah, absolutely. And I feel bad because if I guess in my head, I just thought, because of the Chinese characters, this language is going to be impossible. I'm 42. I've learned most of my languages, as an adult, but I just didn't think that I was going to be able to do this. But Chinese Simplified is actually fairly easy to learn. The hard part is the characters, is having to memorize how each one of those characters is written, right? So in terms of vocabulary, my vocabulary is growing the same way that Zara's is growing. Because of neuroplasticity, she's definitely picking it up faster. But yeah, it's been really, really rewarding to sit there. And if I had known that, I think I would have pushed my kids to learn it, all of them. In fact, a couple of weeks ago when I was set in on the first Zoom, I thought, man, wouldn't it be nice if my child, who's now a freshman at Timpview, could take Chinese? I would love for him to take Chinese right now. And it's too bad that he can't.
This might be a good point because you mentioned before about your own experience when you came to the US and learned English. And, so like someone who's in high school, it's possible, right?
Absolutely.
A little bit about your experience, maybe with language coming here, right?
Yeah, sure. So I came to the US because of an LDS missionary who served where my parents lived. And so when his parents came to pick him up, they invited me to come. And I think the idea was my parents were wanting to come and go to school here. My parents never finished college. I come from a very humble background. And so that was kind of the idea. And they said, well, why don't you go a couple months ahead and then we'll be there. And it never happened. Actually, this was when I was 12. And so then Dirk, the missionary, this was in Salt Lake, he right after, he just said, hey, see ya, I'm going to BYU, have fun. And so I'm in his, in his house with no one that speaks Portuguese. And he even said, I'm going to give you the missionary treatment, which is I speak no Portuguese to you. You just have to learn English. And I remember spending lots of days just in my room, not wanting to leave, just going to the bathroom and getting food. And that was it, because I was so scared. But as school started, within a month, I was able to understand most of what was happening. Now, a little bit more background, I did take English in Brazil, and I thought I knew how to speak English when I got here. And I think most people are like that, they take a class and like, oh yeah, I can speak. I took, Spanish 3, I can speak Spanish. And then you go to a Spanish speaking country and you go, oh, I can't speak this language, because they're going so fast. There's all the slang words, right? They cut words. And so that happened to me.
And what grade were you in? So you just started going to school?
Yeah, I just started going to school. I was in 7th grade.
So just at the junior high?
Yeah.
You just showed up, and it was the beginning of the year, or was it mid-year?
Yeah, beginning of the year, right in the fall. And so I was here for 6 months, and then I went home. And in those 6 months, that's when I learned most of my English. And then I came back when I was 15 and went to high school. And, I, aside from my American mom helping me try to do my homework, that was it. That's all that, everything else I was just thrown into. I had to do, any social situation, anything, I just had to muscle my way through.
And it wasn't really English classes, right? You were just dropped right in with the other kids.
I was just dropped right in.
So you're learning history and math and
everything. So,
yeah, I think, that with language, a lot of times we hurt ourselves by trying to learn language instead of just like jumping in and learning stuff in that language,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a holistic approach to just learning everything that really makes way more sense. Separating things just, it doesn't quite help. And especially, when I think of Zara, I think one of the things I can see an exponential growth right now in the last 2 to 3 weeks as she got into Mandarin Matrix, and she's reading those little books and seeing the picture and having this context, playing in the snow or playing with dad, or, it's way more interesting than just sitting there and saying, you, ni, I, wa, and,
right.
And so, I think that's kind of what happened to me too, right? I just had to figure things out. I remember saying, somebody asking me, what grade are you in? And I said, in Brazil, we call it elementary school is gymnasium. I don't know why we call it that, but that's what it is. I think in German, I think they say something like that too. But I said, oh, I'm in 7th grade gymnasium. And somebody said, gymnasium, that's where you go and play sports. So I had to eventually figure out, oh, that's, it's elementary or junior high or whatever, just by talking. So
right. Maybe just back to nuts and bolts with Zara and Wasatch. What do you mean? What's going on with homework loads? Because I know a lot of parents are interested in, because different schools are different styles. Like some schools don't have any homework at all. What would you say is kind of a typical homework load, let's say on the day or on the week for Zara at Wasatch in second?
So actually the homework, I don't think it's a lot. Now that I understand what's going on, she does basically the math book has a portion in Chinese where she learns that in class. Right. And then there's the portion that's reinforcement in English, and you get to do that at home. And now that I know that, it makes a lot more sense. It also, one of the things that the tutor also advises, if you can get her a little bit ahead on the English side of it, so that when she gets to the Chinese lesson in class, she already knows the material. It will make it a little bit easier for her. So she's not just sitting there going, I have no idea what they're trying to say, and I don't know how to do this, right? So that has been, that basically is the homework plus reading 2 books, the little 2 books in Mandarin Matrix. So
And
it's not a lot of homework really.
and do you get physical books at all, or they're all online with Mandarin Matrix, or does she bring home physical books that
Mandarin
she reads?
Matrix is all online. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have any physical books in Chinese at all at this point?
Just the math,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
and
like that's a
then,
struggle for parents, to try to
yeah,
find physical books, because I think that's important too, probably,
right.
right?
They have the character books, which it seems like from what Zara has told me, and so I have to kind of take everything with a grain of salt. They're now doing just the characters at home. I think maybe the kids were having a hard time doing it at home, at home. Sorry, the characters in class. So now I think they just do them in class.
Right.
But other than that, I think the biggest thing is just because she has to catch up, we have to constantly be, repeating and going over what she learned, right, every day during the tutoring session. So it feels like there's more homework. And then if you think about it, the fact that she had no homework in her previous school, then it's a huge transition. But she's getting used to it. Our tutor is brilliant. She really is brilliant. She said, how about maybe you come up with a reward system. And so we went to Target, bought a bunch of toys. And every week, if she does all her assignments, she doesn't complain, on Friday, she gets to pick one of the things that we got. So
Right.
that has helped, she gets more excited, but she's also, this is the thing that I found amazing. On Friday night, she had a friend from her Portuguese immersion spend the night. And for the first time ever, I heard Zara speak Portuguese to her. And then on Zoom or on the computer to our neighbor here who speaks Chinese, she was speaking Chinese to her.
Right.
So that was really, I've never
Yeah.
seen her ever do that,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it was
that's
really
priceless.
exciting to see that.
Yeah, as a parent, that's what you want to see, but how to get to that
Yeah,
stage, because it's got
yeah,
to come from the child, right? And
it totally does.
you have to have a surrounding too. You've got to have an educational context, but when the child like proactively speaks in another language, then you feel like, wow, this is what we need, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just coming in from the outside and looking at the Utah program, and what I mean is you've traveled and you've lived and you have background in Brazil. What's your sense on, the program and how it's set up and whether the kids are going to be fluent or not? And what are your hopes for that? Do you think that she's going to be, how do you feel about it 2 months in? And
Yeah.
maybe it's hard to say because you're still kind of in a catch up mode and
Yeah.
is she going to be fluent, do you sense, or is it just hard to say?
Well, if the program is as good as I've heard from neighbors that have, kids that have already taken the AP test and got a 5 on it, then yes. I don't think the problem will be necessarily my child or, a person's child. From the Portuguese background, and we talked about this in the first Zoom that I was in, what I've noticed is by the time the program gets to middle school, it starts to kind of get diluted because they only have 2 classes, right?
Right.
And so that's where, in fact, I pulled my son out of 8th grade Portuguese and said, you know what, you're just going to go to Centennial and, I'll try to speak to you. We'll go to Brazil and visit. And, that's how you're going to learn. Because at that point, like I mentioned, I haven't been the best mom in speaking Portuguese to my kids. But my son came back after he spent 6 months in 4th grade. We left. We came back to 8th grade. And he was speaking just as well, if not a little better, than the kids that were in 8th grade that have been on, in the program this whole time.
Right.
And that was a little bit disappointing. And I don't know if that's the same issue with Chinese. But, the other thing that that I've heard is, where's the Chinese teacher in high school? There should be a Chinese teacher for these kids, I think, or someone like you who has lived there for a long time and is very, very fluent in Chinese to be able to teach those kids. I think there's also what I noticed, because we did have a big problem in the 8th grade Portuguese. And so I had to actually go into the school and be there for the whole time for the 7th and 8th graders for a couple of days and just observed. What I also noticed is that the curriculum, again, it's something to consider for Chinese. does it really apply to these kids? Because these kids in middle school are in this, like, what is this going to do for me? How does this apply to my real life? Right. And so if they're learning just for the sake of learning, that's not really what they want.
Yeah.
It needs to be more interactive. They need
Right.
to be able to have a question and say, okay, I want to research this question in this culture, in this language. Right.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that that I noticed, that I thought, man, these kids they're ripe for learning, but it has to be the right information,
Yeah. I mean, those are the things that concern me. The first thing that really concerns me about the program right now is to be fluent in a language. They say that you have to enjoy reading in that language on your own, that you pick up books and you consciously choose that, and that needs to start in 3rd and 4th and 5th grades. And if you don't get that, you're probably never going to be a fluent reader. So that concerns me. And then the other issue that you said, when they get to be, at least they're getting a half day in school up until 6th grade or 5th, depending on the school. But then when you get into, when they cut it way back, the amount of exposure to the language, I worry that the kids lose steam. And that feels like the point where they become old enough to be agents and to really fly in the language, like send them to China for 6 months.
Absolutely.
Let's have, different kinds of programs where it's computer programming, or it's things that are exciting that they want to do anyways, and they just happen to do it in Chinese because they can, but it's not Chinese because in their mind they might think Chinese is an academic subject and I'm doing more work than other kids and I'd rather be out playing, rather than they're playing in Chinese. And I feel like that's where we're missing something, and I don't know if the school can deliver that, because really what we need is a culture where, like you said, your daughter has friends that speak Chinese and that they're able to use that. Like if we could put that like times 10, and there was a community where it was just natural that you're speaking and you're doing cool things, like maybe you're doing the manga, or you're.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I don't know how that could get built, but I think, someone who's got your background might have some ideas and take some risks about getting out to China and connecting, rather than just waiting for the teacher to take care of it in the school.
Absolutely. Well, and that's, then you bring up the question of equity, right? And that's where, and funding and all that. I know from what you've said, the Confucius Institute has been able to help out with a lot of that. I think that a trip to another country, I just remember when I was 12 and I came to the US, and I went home after 6 months, and it doesn't even have to be 6 months, but I came home after 6 months, and I knew that as fun as I was having back home in Brazil with all my friends, I had seen something different.
Right.
And I wanted something different, and that's when my eyes opened and my mind opened. I thought there is like a plethora of possibilities out there that I am not able to get by just being right here. Right. And, granted, Brazil is Brazil, US is US, totally different country, but the ability to just open yourself up to the world, like that's when it hit me. And I was 12. I didn't even know what was happening really to myself. Right. I just remember thinking, I want more. And if you
initiated that, it wasn't your parents so much.
Yeah.
You said, I want to go to the US and I want to check this out.
I mean, my parents said, do you want to do it? And I said, sure. I was curious. And I thought it was only for 2 months because they were going to come. Right. And then they didn't. And I said, no, I will stay until the end of the semester. But then I decided to come back when I was 15.
Right.
I said, I want this. This is the path I want to take. And they were, willing to let me do it. And so, I look at, I think the biggest problem that we have is we have so much fear of the unknown. Sure. Right. And then you think about all the stereotypes that we have, that we deal with all the time. And so then we think, oh, China, do you really want to send your child to China? What's going to happen to them there? I remember being in Malaysia, traveling with my family, and everyone's like, oh, it's a country of Muslims. And I'm like, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? It's people, they're people, and they're lovely and they're wonderful, And so there's a lot, I think most of our problem is just this self-limiting belief that we constantly put on ourselves.
Yeah.
right? And on our children, because we believe that. So then therefore our kids may not be able to do it either, instead of just allowing them to flourish, right? In their own way. So
yeah, I mean, I hear you saying that we need to allow that to happen, but it also needs to come from the kids to a degree. Like it's kind of this cooperative thing, right? Where the kids want to do something and then we say yes, or we help it happen, but we don't tell them to do it necessarily, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of this fine line.
But at the same time, like, you know, this is my struggle. When we were traveling, a lot of, in fact, one of the reasons why we came back was because my middle child was really struggling while we were traveling.
So you might want to give background, as we talked earlier, quick, your trip. I mean, this is this is not just like, you know, a week to California, right?
Right. Yeah. So in 2017, my husband and I just decided life was too busy. It was too stressful. And we just decided to sell everything and just simplify completely. And that created an opportunity where we had time on our hands and we said, well, let's go travel. And that has been a passion of ours. Both of us love to do that. So we found a cheap ticket to Bali, Indonesia, and that was our first stop.
And how many kids with you? I mean, how did that work?
Three children. So it was 2018 when we left, beginning of 2018. Isaac was 12. Bella was 9 or 10. And Zara was about 4 or 5. And 5, I think, 5. And so many times during the trip, because, you know, we lived in a place, we stayed there for at least a month. They wanted to stay home. They didn't want to go see something. They didn't want, you know, but the funny thing, to make a long story short, after all that, there isn't one day that goes by that one of them doesn't say, I miss traveling. Remember when we did this here? Remember when we ate that there? Remember when we met that person? You know?
It's so memorable, right? Because it's it's unpredictable. It's out of the ordinary. So and especially when you're young, because you remember things, right? Yeah.
But so many times we were pushing them to do something, to get out of their comfort zone, to get out of the house and go explore something. And they didn't want to. But now that we're home, they all want to be gone. They all want to go somewhere. So there is that balance. Yes, it has to come from the child, but at some point the parent has to kind of like, you know, give them that lift off so that they can say, oh, okay, I can actually do this now. You know, in 2016, for example, I took my 2 oldest to Italy, spent the summer there, took Italian classes. And I said, you guys are going to starve if you don't order your food, because I'm not doing it for you.
Right.
You know? And so now guess what?
Pushing them out of the nest. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they are able to do those things now because they know they can. They did it before, so they can. Yeah. Right. So we have to somehow push, you know, and so with Zara right now, the reward system has really worked out because, you know, she says, okay, I chose all these things and I know they're just sitting in the closet waiting for me. I just have to do this. And at the same time, I'm creating this habit because one of the reasons why I wanted her to go into Chinese, not just for the language, but for the cultural habit of hard work. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I wanted her to be able to have that habit of you come home and you still do work and you still learn and, you know, and so now she's creating this habit and then she gets something, you know, in return. But, you know, that's something that I was never taught when I was back home. Right. You know, and so I came here and I lived with this family and they were really hard. They pushed me a lot on hard work. And so, you know, I'm hoping that if anybody that's kind of wondering, oh, should I still do this for my child? Or it's possible. It's totally possible. And I would even say, you know, I think it's awesome that you're doing this community and putting all this information on classes because, you know, my oldest kids, they just really are into Japanese right now. That's their thing. And I kept saying, well, how about Chinese? We're already learning Chinese. And like, no, we want Japanese. But if there was something like that in Japanese, that would be amazing, you know, for them to be able to do that. And so for the parents who, you know, didn't get maybe moved here or, you know, the kids just weren't able to get into, or maybe for whatever reason, you
Sure.
know, it's still totally possible. You can still get your kid to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that because like you said, we've had a COVID year, and next August, kids will be coming back, and
Mhm.
first grades are always booked out in Utah, right? They're just full, and there's waiting lists, and parents give up. But if you take some time over the next few months and work with a tutor, I think your kid can go into second
Absolutely.
grade or possibly even third, and there's going to be slots because you have 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 kids move out, and no one's going to fill those slots. So, to try to replicate what you've done with Zara, I think other parents could do that and not feel like
Absolutely.
they missed the boat on Chinese. Because as we were talking earlier, without the program kind of as an anchor, it's really hard to try to do this on your own, try to
Yeah.
teach your kid Chinese without that half day of school for, 12 years in K-12 schools.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask one more thing, and we're hitting the wall on time, but what about the issue of, so Zara gets really good at Chinese and she's really into it, and it's, she gets involved in the pop culture and games and all the kind of fun things. So she's really, and then you get really good because you're naturally just spending time in it. But say she decides she wants to move to China, like maybe to go to
Go for it.
college or to high school. I mean, you're going to miss her, right? Like you moving
Oh,
from
yeah.
Brazil. How do you deal with dislocation? Because for me, it's been an issue, like I was over there for so long, and I'd come back, once a year and see my family, but you just really, it's hard to keep touch. When the world's so big like that, you don't worry about losing Zara to China.
No, not at all. It's funny because while we were traveling, we did see a lot of Chinese, right? They come in those big old buses with their iPads, and so because she's blonde, they're like, oh, this blonde little girl. And so they just grab her and they want to take a picture, with her. And I think the 18 months that we spent out in the world has made me realize that everybody is just like me. Everybody lives the same life. And that's one of the things that we love, is being able to go into a place and say, how is their life just like mine? Or what are the differences? And I guess, having had this experience of leaving my country and coming to live in another country, I feel quite comfortable with that.
But I mean, your mom missed you, right? I mean, physically
Oh,
you were
absolutely.
apart. I mean,
Absolutely.
and
And I'm already crying. The fact that I have a 14-year-old that's going to be leaving the roost in 3 years, after he graduates. I'm already crying about that. But it's just this beautiful journey that we all have to have. I'm really grateful that my parents allowed me, had enough faith in me that, to allow me to do this. And, and I think they still had a lot of fears. I like to believe that I have less fears than my parents did. But there's so much that China can offer Zara or any of our children. And think about it, China, according to some macroeconomists, is the next superpower. I mean, the world order is about to change supposedly, and China is going to become the number one superpower. So why not teach the language and the culture of the future?
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know?
well, we'll close off on that high note. I totally agree with what you've said. I mean, China's on the rise, and what you've said about the opportunity and the benefits of having your child go to China, even though, you maybe physically you're apart for a time, but that it's wonderful to see. I think that can encourage parents who maybe have fears about,
Go with them.
kids. Yeah, exactly. Well, you say it. I mean, you can sell everything and travel for 18 months. I mean, just the
Yeah,
possibilities that are out there and the benefits that come back. I think you really
absolutely.
communicated that. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
It's
Yeah.
not that hard. I mean, I think we are so tied to our possessions, but it's not that hard. I mean, I feel very disconnected or detached from things now. I mean, the things that are really important to me are my kids and my relationships, and the rest is just the rest, So
Right. All right. Well, this has been fascinating and inspiring for me. I mean, so I really appreciate all that you've shared, and
thank you.
we'll get this out and let people enjoy it. So thanks
All
again
right,
for your time.
no
And
problem.
Utah Mandarin families, you can join if you haven't, and look forward to global community here in Utah. So thanks so much, Ren. You are awesome. Really great.